Hello everyone. If you've been thinking about drawing, you might have realized that there are different types of drawings. And today we're going to be having a look very quickly at how we do technical illustrations and show movement in a drawing. Now, the problem with drawings is that, unlike the video that you're watching now, nothing moves. So we need to find a way of being able to show intended movement or movement that we anticipate something's going to do, so we can evaluate the idea that we're playing with, or show someone else how it moves. So over here I've just drawn some very quick examples of things that move that have arrows to indicate that movement. So if you had ever had one of those handle pencil sharpener things, just very quickly drawn a side view of this. And so here's our crank handle. This is the part that you would hold on, and this is the part that it rotates about. So that's actually the center of the axis of movement. And you might have heard the term axis before, and I think it's something that's easiest understood by drawing a line. So if we have a look at the screwdriver example, we can draw a line all the way through the center of that movement. So when you start to rotate the screwdriver, it stays in that position along that line, and it rotates around that line. Even though that line is imaginary, you can actually see it running through. So I think a screwdriver is a cool example. So here, what we've done is we've drawn a curved arrow to show that the screwdriver is going to be turning in a clockwise movement, and that's going to allow us to screw the screw in. Going back to our pencil sharpening example, this is another one where it rotates around a point. So this point is the same as looking at that line from the center, and so it will rotate in an arc. It'll rotate around that point. So this point's not going to move, but this point is, and we can see that it can move in both directions. So we've done an arrow pointing downwards in a little curve. As we can see, it doesn't have to be a perfect curve. I mean, if we actually held a compass at that point and we locked it in and we rotated it, you can see the curve is actually a lot more curvy than my arrows. But the arrows indicate that it does have movement and it's moving in that general direction. So technical illustration in this method or this style is very quick. It's very loose and free, but it's also trying to be precise and trying to be clear in the way we are showing that movement. So in the example of a seesaw, the seesaw technically is also rotating around that point, but it's less curved than what we have in these examples. So what I've done is more or less drawn a very straight line saying that if I push down over here, this side's going to go up. And so we can see that again, the axis of the movement is over here, and it's rotating around that point or moving about that point, but this part's going down and this part's going up, and there's actually very little movement happening there. Again, in the screwdriver, the center of that axis stays the same as you turn it, and it's just revolving around that point. So those are really examples of a single axis of movement. So it's just moving around one fixed point, and it's quite simple. But the next example that we've got is a little bit more complex because there's multiple positions that it can move in, or directions it can move in. So if we have a look at like a joystick knob, you can see that here the joystick can, if you've ever played a Wii or Xbox, you've got those little thumb knob things, we call them a joystick. This is just a very quick sketch of what that would look like, and you can see that in here I've almost drawn the arrows in 3 dimensions to show that it can move in this direction, so forwards and backwards, but it can also move left and right. Actually, if you looked at it from the top, there's another axis of movement that it can rotate around this point in a circle. So that's where you can see we've got these arrows over here saying that it can curve around this point, but it can also move forwards and backwards, and it can move left and right. So this has got multiple axes of movement, and we could almost imagine like there's a ball sitting underneath here, and it's held in a socket, kind of like your elbow or your leg, and your arm can move in all directions around that ball and socket joint. So here we would typically say that it can move forwards and backwards, it can move left and right, and if we really wanted to be able to illustrate that it can rotate in that axis, we maybe would put another line over here it does get a little bit confusing if you have too many arrows. And so remember, these arrows are very simple. Please don't draw arrows like this, because that's just awful, and it overrides it takes over on the actual drawing. Like if you're starting to point at something small, let's say you're pointing at something there, the arrow's taken way more focus than what you've drawn. So you want to keep the arrows very small and simple, to just show that movement and what's happening. So it doesn't have to be super precise, it doesn't have to be exact, it doesn't even have to be that neat. This is just really how you want to clearly communicate that movement that's coming through in a drawing. So I hope that's helpful. I know that some of you have a project where you will be doing a drawing of what you've built and illustrating the axes of movement. So it'll probably look something like this, and you might have more than one set of arrows. So let's say the seesaw was on a revolving base that could spin around, so that instead of just going up and down, you could spin around while going up and down, and I'm sure that you would be sick pretty soon. But let's say we did that and we drew the base, and we could say, okay, it doesn't only just go up and down, it goes around left and right like that as well. So there you can see, not very accurate, but it's showing us that now it's not just able to move up and down, it's also able to move around in a circular way. I hope that was helpful. Keep practicing your drawing. Drawing is a skill that is developed through practice. So draw something every day if you want to get better, and you will. Have fun.